Good morning and welcome. You are with the Skeinz Diaries. This is Maree, and it is a rather grey old day, Thursday, 29th of September, episode 197. Welcome along for another week. Sorry, being a little late. Got chatting to people in the shop, as one does, and then I looked at the time and I felt like the Mad Hatter, late for a very important date. But that's all right, I'm here now, so welcome along. Hope everything is going well at your place, and I had a bit of a revelation yesterday when one of the kids got home from school, and they announced to me about stuff that was happening in the next couple of days at school, followed by school holidays. And I looked at them blankly. This is what happens when you have high schoolers, you see. Time becomes this very, very what sort of abstract construct. And I had no idea that the school holidays were starting this week. So which is good, because it gave me inspiration for this morning's newsletter, which I've just sent out. And that's what I'm going to talk about, is some Boredom Busters for the kids for the school holidays. First, however, I thought I would just catch you up on progress with my Fox Bay, and also talk a little bit. Good morning, everybody. Everyone's coming on in this morning. Sorry I'm late. I sent out the newsletter on Tuesday, so of course we did it a day late because it's Tuesday, public holiday Monday. Anywho, I talked about the Hitchhiker collection from Martina Beam, and I've had a look this morning. I'm going to get some of the hard copy books down for Christmas, and because they just look beautiful, 20 patterns all in the collection. She does them in a hard copy, and sometimes it's really special about being able to have a book in hard copy form. So I'm going to do that. And that collection, the Hitchhiker collection, as you know, there are a number of patterns in there that I absolutely love. And I mentioned in Tuesday's newsletter about, I did another one yesterday too, but in Tuesdays I mentioned about I've always got one of her designs on the go at any given time. I find her designs are perfect for what I call my purse knitting. So this is my purse knitting, and it's a small project which I can easily have, that I can just throw in a handbag if I'm going anywhere. This often sits in the car, so I've always got some knitting on the go. And this is the current one that I've got. As you can see, not a lot of progress has happened with this because I've been doing other things. But this is Niada, which is one of my favorites. And this is using a gradient hand-dyed yarn I've had in stash for forever. I've only got a single skein of it, and this will be perfect for it. So this is what I'm doing with this. I've done Hitchhikers, I've done Brickless, I've done so many, but I always have something, it's a little project on the go like that. And it is, I can tell you, actually, I'm going to show you this because my son never watches this. Last time I had this, I obviously was at my parents' place just recently, and my dad must have given me this. It's my youngest son. Now he's now 14. Look at that. Wasn't he cute? It's back in the days when you remember them when they were small and cute. Bless their little hearts. So anyway, that is Niada. So if you do watch out for that hard copy book. I'm going to put that order through today, and hopefully have those. I'll probably only do about 4 or 5 of them just to see how we go. I will warn you guys, with the exchange rate at the moment, the exchange rate is horrific. They're not going to be the cheapest books known to man, so they'll probably be somewhere in the zone of around $80. But there are 20 patterns in there, and each one of them is a keeper. So, I want one of them, so I'm going to be doing that too. Thank you, Elizabeth. Lovely jumper. This is my gold wing. I love it. And it's not super cold today, so I just needed something to take the chill off. And I've done this in Southlander Sport, so it's sort of that lighter weight. It's not too heavy. And I wear this actually sweater a lot in this transitional time of year. Actually, speaking of Southlander, before we dive into anything else, Claire has gone and bought me a whole bunch of Southlander because we're just getting them up. Southlander is now starting to come back into stock. It has been out of stock since the big clearance, and part of the reason it's coming back into stock because it's in its new format. These are the new balls. So they've now been moved into 100 gram balls. It is because of a balling issue at the mill. One of the machines had to be replaced, which means doing 200 gram balls has now become a real mission. So we've now moved them into these 100s. But it does mean that everything is in 100 gram balls. We've always done our Southland Sport in 100 gram balls. So everything is in there. So DKs, bulkies, all now in 100 gram balls. So when I get done, I think Claire may even be changing them out now. They will be popping back up online. So that's good news. Now, Fox Bay. Oh, thank you. Tabitha likes the label. We like the label too. Do you want to hear something funny, Tabitha? When the guy sent the label through to us, he sent it through, and originally he had 5 sheep on here. And one of the sheep, the way his legs were, kind of looked like it was all sort of cack-handed and cockeyed, and just he kind of looked like he had a broken leg. It was the weirdest thing. So we ended up we dropped it back down to just 3 sheeps. 3 sheeps. That's not very good English, isn't it? 3 sheep. So yes, we like the labels too. Okay, Fox Bay. Fox Bay's going well. I actually had a good little lash on Fox Bay last night. In fact, I had to start a new ball. So I showed you the back on Tuesday. But for those that missed it, I'll just show you again. It's not pressed yet. I should actually get this pressed, so when I show it to you, it sits nicely. But there's the back. And before you say to me, that doesn't look like the back, it looks like the front. Well, it can be the front too, because this is a reversible cardigan. So so that's it there. All done. And it went so fast. I couldn't believe how quick it is. And this is my front. So I've stopped. I've just cast on a new ball. And actually, you were right. It's funny with vintage. If you're center pulling from these balls, I will warn you that obviously the spindles they use for balling, there's a difference from our spindles. You do have to pull out a little wodge to get the center pull. It's a pain, but it's not the end of the world, just so you know. Anywho, so that's one half of my front, and that's the band there. So obviously you may look at that and go, gosh, that's like huge, and it's because obviously this overlaps. They've got a big overlap on the front band, and I've just done my last. I think I've just done my last, or I'm about to do. Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4. No, I've just done my last decrease from my size on the sides there. So that's done. And I think I've got about 4 or 5 centimeters to go until I start my shaping on that front slope. So once I start that decrease, it's going to go like that, and I will probably have this done quite quickly, this half done quite quickly. And then I think from memory, I've just quickly flicking through the instructions, I think there's like a 3 needle bind off on the shoulders, and then you pick up stitches across that side, and you actually knit the sleeves out from picked up stitches. So that'll be a nice, neat edge. So that's where I'm at. Flying by with that. Totally loving working again with vintage aboard. Vintage is, as you know, holds a huge place in my heart. And I'm just loving it. Really enjoying it. And I can see I will knit more of those cardigans because it has a great pattern. Really, really enjoying that. So that is Fox Bay. So progress on that is going really well. But school holidays, back to school holidays. I thought, right, get some ideas out, because many of you either will be having kids come home for school holidays, or you'll be looking after children during school holidays, or you'll have grandies, nieces, nephews, friends, or little people invade your life for 2 weeks. This is how we roll down here. I know I've got a number of my Americans and Australians, and I think the Aussie school holidays either and now, I think you guys, most Australian school holidays run a week or 2 ahead of ours. So you guys are probably in the thick of it as we speak. So the thing I wanted to talk about today is how do we get them actually, if we've got them for a few hours or a few days, how do you actually break up that time, particularly modern kids? Most of them are doing this on devices. And oh, there we go. Sian's just saying, yes, school holidays just started this week. I had a feeling you guys were about a week behind us, a week ahead of us, rather. How do you get them off devices and sort of doing something crafty and with their hands and unplugged for a little bit? And crafts are perfect for that. And teaching them how to knit is a really, really great option to actually get them focused on something else, but also using their brains. And it's amazing how much time can be chewed up in doing something different. So teaching them how to knit, I've put out in this morning's newsletter 2 things, a couple of different options, depending on what you want to do. But I have talked about this before, I think. It's been a while, but I've been teaching people how to knit, adults, children, and the like for years now. And there is 1,000,001 videos online. There's 1,000,001 ways to do it. But my rule of thumb is you teach the person with you the way that you like and know how to knit. So if you're a continental knitter, teach them continental. If you're a classic British knitter like I am, I teach them the right-handed throwing method because that's what I know. So you teach them what you know. That's rule number 1. Patience is always a good thing. And then just getting the simplest tools. So what I find, and it doesn't matter whether I'm teaching an adult or a child, is there are 3 rules around this. One is repetition. The other is instant gratification. And the third thing is patience. And if you've got all of those nailed, you're not going to have any issues teaching someone how to knit. I love teaching people how to knit on either bulky or chunky yarns. This is our batch, or even some Southlander bulky if you've got some of that rolling around at home. A lighter colour is always good because it makes it easier to see your stitches and the movement of your stitches. The reason for this is and this has been proven, the Waldorf schools through in the anthroposophical movement who've been teaching people how to knit for decades and decades and decades have found these heavier, bulkier and chunkier weight yarns and needles are easier from a tactile perspective for people to handle and get started with. So I teach what I call the Karate Kid method of knitting. And if you've seen the Karate Kid, which is a movie from the 1980s, there is a whole scene in the very first film, and it's called wax on, wax off, wax on, wax off. And he makes the main character do this again and again and again and again. And then there was another one called paint the fence, paint the fence. But knitting for me is very much the same. And I only teach people, the very first thing I teach them is knit stitch. I even cast on for them. I don't even start with a cast on. If you try to teach someone starting with a cast on, trust me, you're going to be diving into the gin before lunchtime and it's going to be tears and it's just not going to be fun. Do the cast on for them. Even potentially do the first couple of rows. Okay, you want this to be a positive experience. So get yourself a bulky or a chunky yarn, and the needles you want a needle that is 1 or 2 sizes bigger than what you would normally use for the yarn. So this is a 6mm needle. This 6mm needle you could use for either bulky or chunky, or even go with a 7mm needle if you're using chunky yarns. But you want a slightly bigger or thicker needle, because if we can all remember back to when we learnt, those stitches, those very few stitches when you're doing it are tight. It takes a while to get your tension sorted, and I have never met a beginner yet that has sloppy tension. They all have super tight tension. That takes a little bit of time. But this is where the repetition comes in. So the way I do it is I get everyone to knit a cowl. I've put just the basic instructions for that cowl in the newsletter. They cast on 25 stitches, or you cast it on actually. You cast on 25 stitches, and then essentially it is knit, stitch on, stitch off, knit on, knit off, until the ball is completed. You want them just working knit stitch. And the reason for this is that it allows the beginner to actually get the feel of the needles, how the needles feel in their hand, what their posture is like. Most of them will do this. You want to actually have their posture good. You want them to be relaxed. You want them to get used to holding the needles. You want them to get used to moving the yarn around the needles, whether or not you're teaching them to pick, or whether or not you're teaching them in a right-handed method. You want them to just do the same stitch again and again and again, and weld in what that stitch is like, creating that stitch and moving that stitch. The beautiful thing about knit stitch is I think it creates probably one of the most underrated fabrics in knitting, which is garter stitch. And by having 25 stitches, and then you just literally make a single ball, you'll get it'll be about that long, a garter stitch strip, and get to the end of the ball where you've got enough that you know that you've got enough to cast off, and then some for sewing. And then you just bring those two ends together, sew yourself a seam, and voila, you have a cowl. And they've actually made their first project. If you want to be super funky, you can put a single twist in before you sew that seam up. Then they have a Mobius cowl. Aha. But actually having a tangible project that they have completed on their very first outing, I think is really, 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 really important. They need short. Bev's saying they need short needles. Yes, actually, it's Bev's. Look, I've taught most people to do it on just standard straight needles, because getting short needles is really, really difficult. But Bev's idea, and it's a brilliant idea, is using double pointed needles with stoppers on each end, and that does work. If you've got that at home, by all means do it. I find sometimes teaching them on long needles works just as well, because they need to get used to handling those, and they can get over that hump actually pretty quickly. It's the younger the kids are, the more difficult it can be handling longer needles. But I know at Steiner they use standard needle sizes most of the time there. So if you've got them at home, definitely do. You can do that. And I just find if you get that repetition going, and then the other thing is you get that project completed, get them casting on another one. I taught someone to knit over lockdown, well, the first big lockdown, and we did it remotely. And I think Paul Callum, must have had him knit. He's not. You might pop in if you're there, Callum. Say hello. How many cows did I make you knit before I even? And he got so annoyed with me in the end that he actually came back to me and said, "I've just taught myself how to do purl now, Maree." And he was able to go off and do it himself, and did it on. And just did it on YouTube, because he's YouTube generation. But this is the thing, by doing knit stitch again and again and again and again and again, once they've got that completely nailed, then you can teach them how to purl, and they will do it just like that, because they'll know how to hold the needles. They'll understand the construction of the stitch and how it works, and it will just happen. You can then teach them how to cast on. Cable cast on is always the best one to do, because essentially that's just a knitted cast on. So it's just a variation on a theme, the standard knitted cast off. So the trick is just to incrementally grow. Once you've mastered doing those stitches, you incrementally grow after that. Guys saying I've been knitting. I have a knitting elective, over 20 teenagers, the most challenging teaching ever. Now, is it the teaching or the teenagers, Guy? And actually, while I've got you, it must be end of term, Tiger, if you're here. While I've got you, do you find that they supplement what you tell them and then supplement with YouTube? I find that when I teach adults or teens, I do a mixture of both now. I'll find a YouTube video that resonates with them, and they will I will show them the tactile, but then they'll prefer to defer to the screen, because that's what is native to them, whereas of course that's not native to me. So I'd be interested to see what your experiences are. So don't be put off, guys, if you have got someone in your life that you want to teach how to knit, and it may not need to be a child in your life, it could be an adult in your life too. So, if you've got kids and mum, or even partners, or whoever it may be, it's a great time to actually do it. And the whole movement, the repetitious movement, is actually very rhythmic, and once you get into that zone, it's also very calming, and it actually helps chill you out, chill the person doing it out, and you'll be amazed at how much time you can chew up. Crochet is very much the same. I'm not a natural crocheter. Crochet's got a really easy access in terms of a single hook and yarn. I'm self-taught with crochet. Well, sort of self-taught. I got taught how to crochet when I was 4, and my grandmother taught me. In fact, she taught me how to crochet. I learned how to crochet before I could knit. And the only thing I could crochet was a granny square, because that's what she taught me, was a granny square. I didn't know what the stitches were called. I didn't know anything. All I knew was how to do this little chain loop and then make all these little triangles and then go out from there. And as now in my 50s, I'm still just doing big granny squares and crochet because that's what I know. So if you're a crocheter, I know that you will have your same method, but talking to the 2 crocheters I have on staff, they also talk about doing that same thing, that repetition of stitches, and just doing that same action again and again and again, bringing the hook through, bringing the stitch through, bringing the hook through, bringing the stitch through. Amigurumi, essentially, it's just loads and loads and loads of single crochet. So it is quite repetitious. And amigurumi is a great way to get kids started and engaged to learn how to crochet. In fact, if you're looking for a video on, I think one my son watched years ago who he loved, I think he has a learn to crochet videos, and he's called Louie's Loops, Louie, I think, Louie's Loops. He was a very, very good one if you're looking for one to resonate with the kids to teach how to crochet. So don't forget our batch. We've got that online, the needles. I've got links to those in the newsletters. And if you are feeling game, over the holidays to teach them how to knit, feel free. Guy will be looking forward to the school holidays because he will have 2 weeks of uninterrupted knitting time, I'm sure, to himself, and not a child in sight, one would hope. Okay, the other thing, if you're not feeling up to it and you just want to actually do something loads of fun and activity on your own, is our Ashford needle felting kits. We have restocked these. They're back up on the website. These kits are fabulous. We love them. Ashford do such a good job with these kits. They're amazing because, and I mean, as you can see, they're really reasonably priced. Most of them are $15. And they come with everything. So they come, with your instructions. There you go, your needle felting needle, all your fibre and all your bits and pieces. There's also the wee sponge in there. Everything that you need to make your animal is in this kit, with instructions, outlines, everything. The feedback we've had with these kits over the years has been nothing but overwhelmingly positive. They are a great way if you've got kids coming to stay. They're a great little gift with them that you can all sit down and do together, and they're easy. And then they get to go home with this really incredible, amazing little animal, which they love. And these kits have been designed for essentially school-age children, and just obviously with that needle in there. A little bit of grown-up supervision, because the last thing you want is, particularly if you have siblings, needle wars to break out. I know that with my kids that would have happened, and it would have been all on. Stabbings, probably. 2 boys, could you imagine? The other thing we have got in stock, and we're getting some more of the mono kits, but we've got a few of the bright kits. This is a little bit more expensive. This is the Ashford Weaving Starter Kit, $85, but it gives you the basic loom, and as you can see in there, when I spin that round, there you go, all the yarn and fibre required. I'll just put this back in here so the guts don't fall out, to make that wall hanging. So everything you need to make that wall hanging is in the kit. So you do have your first full complete project in the kit, as well as great instructions. But what it does mean is these, if you've got, like, particularly if you're at home, you've got kids that come to you during the holidays quite frequently, these kits are great because it means that you can do that one project that's in there, and then you can bring your stash over, all those little leftover bits, other little bits and pieces. And then, you know, when you have them again on weekends and the holidays, you can walk this puppy up, and you and this weaving kit is there and ready to go for every time they visit. And these are great. I actually, you know, it's funny, when I was a kid, I got given one of these. When I was probably for Christmas, I think. I know I was primary school age, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. And I used to make blankets for my dolls, and I used to make little bags and all sorts of things. And I've got a funny feeling it was an Ashford one that I had, because I know that they've been doing them for a really long time. And it was something that I absolutely adored. The other thing I learned how to do, I might have mentioned this years ago. The other thing I learned how to do is I learned how to macrame way back. I think it was about 7 when I learned how to macrame. And the reason I learned how to macrame is my grandfather. So many of us know macrame for the big pot holders and creating baskets and the like, right? The other use for macrame that many people aren't aware of, unless you're someone in the equestrian world, but macrame was actually also used for cinches and girths in equestrian, and belts, and making belts. So my grandfather, who was very involved in driving an equestrian, he used to make these beautiful, incredible, intricate belts and cinches and straps and all sorts of things, all out of macrame and macrame stitches, using mercerized and waxed cottons. So he taught me how to do that when I was about 7, and I haven't done it for years. And it was a bit of a blast from the past a while ago, just sort of having a look when macrame first started to reappear, having to dig those skills out. So if you were someone who actually learned how to do something like that back in the day, that's another actually fun little activity that you can do. And don't necessarily think pot holder or a little bag or vessel, but you can actually create long strips and belts or ties or anything that you like with macrame. It is actually quite incredible. So those are some ideas for you. If you go to the Ashford page, you may notice that I've also started putting undyed yarns, just our standard yarns. So things like this will start appearing on there. And I've done that because obviously we sell our naked yarns, but they come in 1 kilo packs, and sometimes 2 if you're wanting to do some dyeing, especially if you're wanting to do some dyeing at home with the kids, to do some fun stuff as well. You're not wanting to buy a kilo of yarn unless you have a project you want to do yourselves. And I thought, well, actually we have these undyed yarns which are perfect for doing dyeing, and we stock the Ashford dyes, the protein dyes. So these are ideal, and all you need to do with these is you just need to wind these back onto a hank. If you have a niddy noddy, and actually I've got one sitting over there, I can show you. I just looked up and realised it was sitting on the shelf. So that's a niddy noddy. If you've got one of those, what this is this makes a hank. So you can use that. But if you don't have one of those, your thumb and shoulder, or thumb and elbow, makes a shorter hank, but it does the same job. You just essentially need to get it wound off into a hank format, which makes it easier to dye. So these yarns are a great way because they're an entry level. You only need to buy a single board or two. And I've gone on, I'm just been popping all those undyed yarns onto that page. So then that way it shows you the options of what those yarns are, which haven't had a dye over them. So when you go to dye them, that you're not going to have any reactions. And there's quite a few there. So it actually surprised me when I started loading them over how many there were. Everything from Southlanders to Perrindales to there's some vintage. There's actually we've just got the natural in the Skeinz tweed back, so that's I've just put that up there because that's undyed. What else? Orb. Yeah, there's a number of yarns there to try. So that is a really great way if you're only wanting to dye a very small amount, to have a little bit of fun at home. And we only stock the small sampler dye packs to get you started, but you may already have dyes at home if you do a little bit of dyeing at home, and that is loads of fun. Or you may wish to use natural and plant-based dyes, which you can look up online. There's lots of information around that. Remember the onions, I don't know whether, I'm talking about, I went to a very, very small rural primary school, so we probably did things that most normal people didn't do. But we used to dye things with dandelions and onion skins, and avocado wasn't a thing back then, but it was onion skins, dandelions, and I think we used to use bark as well. I think we did some stuff with bark, and we used to dye yarns and fibre. And Easter, when we did Easter eggs, it was actual real eggs that were all wrapped in leaves and petals and skins, and then boiled. Then we would boil the eggs to create colourful eggs. Yeah, I know. Rural upbringing in New Zealand in the 1970s, I tell you. So natural yarns is what you want if you're going to do plant-based dyeing. So Southlander is perfect, and Southlander, Chatswood, or Perrindale are really perfect for that. Lichen, thank you, Guy. See, Guy grew up in the same neck of the woods that I grew up in, so I knew you'd remember. Yeah, lichen, I remember now. Yeah, and we had so much fun. It was in, I think they used to tie it in because you often use a mordant when you're doing natural dyeing. And so it was a way to sort of teach us around not only the nature and the foraging, but also the chemistry of the mordants and stuff too. But look, as a kid, I just loved it because it was crafty. And so I was already into crafty stuff at that age. So for me, I was a pig and muck. I was super, super happy about that. So there is lots of things that you can do with the kids. Lots and lots of things that you can do with the kids. Pom-poms. I didn't mention pom-poms. Pom-poms are something that is loads of fun that they can do. French knitting bees. We've all done the French knitting bee, right? We actually have those available for sale. I think we've got them online. I'll have to check. I know we've got them here in store. I love those French knitting bees. I've actually taught people how to work those with the four prongs. If you've got kids, get them to create that eye tube. Or even actually, if they've started learning how to knit, get them to teach them how to do I-cord once they've mastered knit stitch. There's something else that they can do. And friendship bracelets. So kids love friendship bracelets. Oh, they just love them. So if you get them doing a French knitting bee, as soon as they've got a cord long enough to wrap around a wrist, and you give them lots of different colours, dig all those colourful scraps out of your stash bags, and set them to work on those, and they will, honestly, they'll have friendship bracelets for Africa. Get them making bracelets for all their friends. They will love it. Yeah, cotton reels for French knitting. Yeah, that's what I had too, Heather. Can't get wooden ones anymore hardly these days, but there are ways and means around it. So there's loads of different things you can do during the school holidays to keep them occupied and out of mischief. Right, I'm going to head off now and carry on with my day. You carry on with your weekend, and if you are getting ready for school holidays, we're here. We've got you covered. We will have these out to you early next week, so you can have some peace and quiet at your place. I hope I've helped you out, and I will talk to you again next week on Monday. Also next week, it's new month, so that means next Thursday we'll have Ethan along for our regular catch-up and chat as well. But until then, have a great weekend, and I'll see you Monday. Bye.